Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it is my honor to have Aimée Lindenberger with me.
Here's a story of a fundraiser who was launching his very own web show. Each episode is very short due to edits, so it can really flow. Here's a story of a podcast guest star who was busy raising money of their own. They were each great in their own way, fundraising in its own. Till the one day when Jack asked a guest to join him, and they knew it was much more than a jest, that these guests must somehow form a resource. That's the way they all became the podcast guests. The podcast guests, the podcast guests. That's the way they became the podcast guests.
Aimée founded Refocus Fundraising in 2017 and recently joined Global Philanthropic Canada as a senior consultant. With over 20 years of marketing and communication experience and being one of the first in the world to earn a certificate in Philanthropic Psychology, she brings innovative approaches to charities across Canada, helping them engage supporters more deeply, especially in legacy giving, which is her passion. She's assisted many organizations in raising more money, including United Way BC, Plan International Canada, Heart and Stroke Foundation, WWF Canada, and the Salvation Army. Aimée is the author of How to Talk About Legacy Giving and regularly contributes to the sector as a speaker and teacher. She's held leadership roles in the Greater Vancouver Chapters, the Canadian Association of Gift Planners, and the Association of Fundraising Professionals. So, welcome, Aimée. So, philanthropy in the next 10, 15 years is going to be much different than it's been in the last 20 years, as we both have been in the business that long. How do you see, what are the changes that you see coming down the pike? There's this huge intergenerational transfer of wealth, and we're starting to see that with some of these uber gifts that are being bantered about. I think it was the Community Foundation of Winnipeg that received like a $500 million bequest last year, which is just like mind-boggling, right? So at 5%, that's kicking off $25 million a year in unrestricted funds. Like, what an amazing transformational gift that is, to kind of be able to hold yourself in good stead for the next couple of decades. So tell me about how you think at the 20,000 foot level the fundraising is going to change.
I mean, my hope, and this is something we've talked about as a profession, and I think some organizations are making progress on it, but my hope is that we'll start to see more and more integration and less siloed, protectionism among different portfolios. Because I think donors just don't think that way, and their experience is not helped by being lumped into different categories. And so I think the more we can break down those discrete silos and the more we can see things as a holistic journey of the donor, the more we can sort of combat the falling retention rates and the sort of transactionalism that we see, because I think, that's where we can actually make things a little bit different. And again, I think that comes to potentially, my beat is that we need to talk to people more about the vision of the organization, what we're doing broadly as well as in the day-to-day, and so that people never lose that thread of what the organization is doing holistically. And so that's my big hope. And the other interesting trend I see that I think is going to continue is I see a lot more of these fractional fundraisers who are now supporting charities who wouldn't be able to hire a full-time fundraiser. So it's really, I see organizations that are very small being lifted up by some more best practice fundraising strategy, where before they would sort of limp along trying to do their best with the burning souls who started these organizations. And so I find that really interesting that, it seems to work well for the fractional fundraisers who are going into this model, but also now doing, good work for these charities who now have access to professional skilled fundraisers who are using this sort of as a way to engage, with these smaller charities. So I think that's going to be an interesting trend to watch.
So I want to just jump over to a little bit of what I believe forms us as fundraisers is how we grew up and the discussions around the dinner table. So talk to me about the discussions while you were growing up around the dinner table as it related to philanthropy and charity.
It's interesting because I grew up in a single parent family. My mother was a teen when she had me. And so we were very poor, and we actually were the recipient of, Salvation Army food boxes at Thanksgiving and clothing donations and all sorts of charity coming our way. And so I often had great value for that work and saw how much it helped support our own family. We didn't talk a lot about the people who were doing it, but I grew up with my grandparents as part of my sort of care team as well, and so lived with them for part of my life as well. And they were in caring professions, a hospital chaplain and a registered nurse, and did a lot of charity themselves. And it was a little bit interesting. It wasn't showy, as a lot of families I think are. It wasn't something we talked a lot about. You just sort of saw that this is something we do. So it was very interesting being on both sort of the receiving end, but also seeing it be something our family did. Certainly we grew up always taking the UNICEF box out for Halloween, so seeing that through the school system as well being modeled. And so from a young age, also getting involved I volunteered a lot with just TV Ontario was one of my first volunteer experiences, doing the phone lines and really enjoying that. That was one of my first fundraising experiences that I really liked a lot. Thinking like, oh, maybe I have a little bit of a knack for this. And because I could always upgrade people to for just $50 more, you could have the branded TV Ontario umbrella. And so
there you go.
It was something that, when I was a young teenager, the option was always either you go out and get a job or you volunteer somewhere. So, there was always that sense that you had to be contributing in some way. So I think that definitely formed sort of the idea that we always sort of have to give back in some way. Oh, Mike. Hi.
And how did that work with when you were raising your kids? How was philanthropy spoken about, or was it around the dinner
absolutely.
table?
We did the allowance where we give a third to spend, a third to share, and a third to save. So they had their allowance split into 3 categories. And so, not at a set schedule, but certainly when things came up in the world, like the Haiti earthquakes or the forest fires in BC, or if there was, they had school partnerships with schools in Africa through their school, they could choose where they wanted to use some of their share money. And so that would be discussions we would have on a regular basis. We also did the microloans through Kiva as a family. And
Oh, wow.
We would choose which sort of microloan lending opportunities they wanted to take part in. And they would go through and say like, oh, this agriculture one looks neat for this family in Ecuador. And so really sort of look at what impacts they wanted to have in the world.
Right. Wow. Good on you. That's amazing. And are they still charity minded?
Yeah. I mean, they're still young. They're 12 and 13. So we still do it together as a family. They still are sort of learning what it is I do. I think.
Right.
Sort of understanding what legacy giving even is, and what it is I do, how I help charities, and how I help donors, and how we make the world better together.
Well, Aimée, this has been absolutely amazing. I'm so glad we had the opportunity to chat. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
One of the easiest ways is to look for me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Aimée Lindenberger in the world, as far as I know. So Aimée, spelled as you see it on the screen, Aimée Lindenberger, on LinkedIn, or you can reach me at Aimée@refocusfundraising.com. And I'm happy to have people reach out anytime. I love to talk legacy giving or any questions anyone has.
Well, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.